Hello everyone. My name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a professional graphic designer and illustrator, and Sundays is the day that I work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. And today is no exception to that. Hey PL! I'm happy to see you in the chat. If you're watching this live or the replay, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to tell me, hey, PL is always number one when it comes to telling me, hey, I really appreciate that so much. So today we're going to be finishing up the Four of Swords. So I don't foresee this being a super long stream because we don't really have that much to do. But anytime I say that, I get to talking 90 miles an hour, and then I end up having like a nice long stream. But today we're only going to be working on a couple of things because there are only a couple of things left to finish with this illustration. That is our main character's clothing, the sword, and maybe a little bit of detail to the rug. I don't really see it being necessary because it's not super important for it to be detailed. But before we get started, if you guys would do me a huge favor, one of the quickest, easiest, and freest way to support myself as an artist, this stream and this channel, is to hit the like button. That lets YouTube know that you enjoy watching me create, that you think other people will enjoy watching me create, or you just want to support me. It's all good, but please do hit that like button. Now I do have a goal this year. I've mentioned it off and on, but by the end of the year I would love to have 1,000 subscribers. So right now we're at 786, so we have quite a few more to go. But if you would like to see more of this type of content, please hit the subscribe button. Y'all know how YouTube works. This is not new. Right? So one of the best ways to do that, or two of the best ways to support me as an artist, is to hit the like button and hit subscribe if you would like to see more. So let's jump right in. I don't have anything special to talk about. I was actually debating today doing this similar to one of the Paint With Me Live, not Paint With Me Live, the Bring Your Own project streams, which I do on Wednesdays, where I just kind of paint and chill. And that's really primarily because I don't really have a whole lot left to do. However, if you guys were with me Wednesday while I was working on this particular card, you may notice there are a couple of changes. So stylistically, this is a pretty simple, I feel, card. There is detail where there needs to be detail. But on Wednesday where we left off, I had just done the dark brown was the way that this looks. So it was just dark brown in the background. We had our swords. But to me, it was reading a little bit weird because our swords were big, which they are very big in this particular scene, and that is for a reason. But I think that there was some discrepancy between the distance of the background and where the swords sat in the scene. So the way that I remedied that was to bring down the darker brown wall somewhat closer to our main character, and then create the illusion that there is like a space between the edge of the room and sort of the beginning of this dark brown area. So I did that, worked on that. I also fleshed out my character's face and his hair again, because this is going to be on a card, right? I did not think it necessary for me to actually illustrate his locks. I did give the indication that of course he has locks by adding some shadow and a little bit of highlight. But I really like how his face turned out. So the only thing we have left to do with this is again his clothes, the sword on the ground, maybe the rug in front of him. But I would like to add some rim lighting. Now, in terms of the size of the swords, if I was making this like to scale so it would be completely realistic, those swords would probably look a little bit smaller. But because again, this is the Four of Swords and this is a tarot card for a tarot deck, and the idea is that the swords need to be present, I did exaggerate quite a bit the size of these swords just so they could be seen. And sometimes when we are creating artwork, sometimes when we are sort of doing things for a purpose and with intention, sometimes you have to exaggerate a little bit, right? So this is not necessarily meant to be photorealistic or like a photorealistic scene, but it does sort of make enough sense for what it is that we're going for. All right, so right now I have the sketch turned off, and again the background looks great. Everything is exactly the way I would like for it to be in terms of the walls, in terms of the background, the swords, the floors, all of that looks really good. I did take my time with it, so at a certain point I'll share the sort of time lapse of this process, and you'll be able to see a little bit better what I worked on that I did not show live. But for right now, what I'm going to do is turn on my sketch. It's going to show up a little bit darker than normal. Now he is wearing sort of a ox blood red gi, I guess. I was trying not to make it look martial arts centric, but you know, it is what it is. The thing that I have in mind for his outfit, specifically where I have drawn in sort of the border around his collar and as well as the area below in his vest, is to have a somewhat mud cloth inspired design. So whenever I'm doing sketches and things like that, what you'll notice is that there are notes within the sketch, so that if it takes me a while to get to any particular point of the drawing, I'll have notes that will allow me to remember what it is that I had in mind. So in this particular case, we're going to go with the mud cloth. Now, over in my reference panel, I actually have the Queen of Pentacles, which was completed back in 2021. So this is a project, of course, that has been going on for a while. One of the ways that I like to create consistency for a project that has been going somewhat long term is to pull from art that I've already done, right? So when I was looking at this card, there were a couple of things that I wanted to sort of pay attention to. One was how I created the wood texture. Of course, you don't really see it. You see it, but you don't really see it within the floor of the Queen of Pentacles. But I also want to kind of draw on some of her colors. For no particular rhyme or reason, for whatever reason, in my mind, I have it envisioned where his collar is going to have like these pinks and greens within the collar. I have no idea why that's been stuck in my mind. I have no idea whether or not this will work. Hey, Montreal. Montreal says, how you doing today? I'm doing pretty good. I hope you're doing well as well. So no rhyme or reason as to why I want to go with these colors. I kind of want to do some black and white, maybe some cream tones. So we'll play with that. Now, whether or not it works, I have no idea, right? So whenever I am creating work, I sort of give myself a little bit of space and room to be creative, to make those sort of happy accidents and kind of go with the flow. Now, as always, my layers, of course, are labeled. Again, that helps me out, because if I am to sort of walk away from this particular illustration or this file after, who knows how long, I want to be reminded of what it is that I'm doing. Now, not all of the layers are labeled, but more of the important ones are, right? All right, so I have the vest selected. What I'm going to do is hit Control, or on my keyboard, since I'm using a Windows keyboard on an Apple computer, I'm hitting the Windows button, and I'm going to click vest, and that's just going to highlight exactly the area that I want to work on. I'm actually going to create a new layer on top of that, because I don't want to mess up sort of the flats that I have in mind, and I sort of like working on different layers until I'm satisfied with it, and then I'll combine everything so that it meshes well and looks cohesive. But until then, sometimes we can do things that we don't necessarily like, right? So I like to work on separate layers so that I can sort of experiment and have room to make mistakes. So the first thing I'm going to do before I get into using the color references from the Queen of Pentacles is I'm actually going to go back to my reference for this image with the 3D model. And the reason that I'm doing that is because it is going to give me a roadmap for light and shadow, as to where light and shadow sort of hits his chest, his torso, and as well as his pants. So I'm going to do that real quick. As soon as I do, we'll get started with adding some light and shadow to his clothing, and then we'll add all of the color details. So mud cloth comes up a lot in this particular deck. I use it a lot. I used it in the Knight of Pentacles, the Knight of Cups, as well as the Four of Cups, which demonstrated sort of, or illustrated, a knight as well. So I want to kind of carry that over, but I want it to be colorful. I have no idea why colorful is on my mind, but we're going to get into it. So this is my reference that I created from the image that I sort of drew from. Of course, let me zoom out so you guys can see. I wasn't going for exact, right? I just sort of wanted to go for the vibe of this particular room with this particular character, and I wanted it to, of course, fit the style of the deck. Now, in my sketch, of course, there are some lines that are higher and lower, because that sort of is the story of me making changes as I go. But what is important right now is how I set up the light for my 3D character. Now, he doesn't have any clothes on, right? But that's okay. We just sort of need to know where the light hits him, how bright I want it to be in comparison to the brightness of the outside, and then we'll kind of go from there. Right now, I want everything to start off somewhat subtle, right? So if I'm using my 3D model as a blueprint, I'm going to select this nice, beautiful oxblood red. I'm going to go to my hue, saturation, and value panel, which is at the top right hand side of the screen. So let me see, so I can see what you guys can see. All right, so it's at the top right hand side of the screen, and I'm going to sort of play with the saturation and the value portions of this. I want to keep the same red, so I'm going to leave the H, which stands for hue. I'm going to leave that alone, right? But I'm going to sort of raise the percentage in the value, which means sort of how light and dark it is. So I'm probably going to go up to, let's say, about 27, right? But I'm also going to lower the saturation, which is to make it a little less bright. Right, all right, let's see if this works. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but if it does, then that's all the better. So far this looks great. So he seems to have a bit of a highlight here, right, and it carries over into his shoulder. So when I was sort of creating the color with his skin as well as in his hair, I kept this all in mind, right? There's a shadow around his eyes and mouth, and then of course there is highlight above his head. But because he has his back to a light source, the light source being the open door, he's going to be a lot darker than he would be if he were directly within this outside scene. So it looks like a little bit of light here, that's fine. And we're going to add just a bit of light here, right? And then what we'll do is kind of tweak it, because he has, of course, his arms down, so that's going to create a shadow in and of itself. So typically when I do this, I like to start with the shadow color first, but the red is relatively dark in comparison to everything else in the scene. So I'm going to start with the highlight. I'm going to start now adding in the shadows to his sleeves, or to the underside of his sleeve. And so when I was creating the skin, even though I do all of this out of order, when I was creating the skin, I kept all of this in mind, right? Of course, there is light on his shoulder in our reference, but because he's wearing a vest, that's going to create a little bit of a cast shadow on his shoulder, right? So when I went to color in his skin tone, I added that in. Now, if for whatever reason I miss where a shadow should go, then I can just go back and add it as I am creating the illustration itself. So there seems to be a little bit of shadow here along his sort of ribs, his pecs, the lower part of his pecs and his ribs. So I'm just going to add that in. And all of this really is just to sort of create the illusion that he is wearing clothes, right? And again, we're going to add some details in terms of patterns and things like that, different colors, so that all of this makes sense. So if I want to check to see how this looks, right, what I'll do is turn off the sketch, and then I can kind of get a better idea of what this looks like without the crutch of the sketch, so that I can kind of see exactly what we have going on. All right, so again, if you're watching this live or the replay, I really appreciate you for being here. Don't forget to say hey. I appreciate you guys for showing up so far. It is always fun. Today I actually had I wasn't really sure whether or not I was going to speak the entire time, and I may not, right? I'm sort of wanting to delve into a little bit of an experiment. I find that our Wednesday streams, where we're sort of vibing and listening to music, do extremely well, and those are my favorite. I don't know if it's because there's no real pressure to talk or explain, or what it is. I really have a good time doing those. I just kind of sit and work, and we work together. So today what I might do is just sort of depends on how this goes. I might actually just crank the music back on so I can go ahead and finish this, because my goal is to get this particular portion of this card complete. So with the cards, there are a couple of steps, right? Of course, we have to plan them, which if you're new here, there are a few streams where I sort of show the process of planning a set of cards, and we have a new set coming up. So I have one more in the 4s, and then we will be jumping into the 5s. So typically what I'll do is sort of plan and thumbnail each of the numbers for the cards, right? And then after that, that's step 1. So after that, what I'll do is take those thumbnails and translate those into sketches, and then we'll go through the coloring process during some of the live streams. And then after that, even after I've done the color process, there's still a couple more steps to take. So from there, what I'll do is go into Affinity. This will be I'll specifically use Affinity Designer for this part of the process, but you can use Adobe Illustrator if you are developing your own deck. But what I do pretty much is color correct, right? So because I typically work extremely dark, and that is just because my screen is extremely bright, right? So to compensate for that, I tend to work very dark. I usually don't realize it until I go into post-production. And so what I'll do is go into Affinity Designer. I'll make any sort of adjustments to the color, to the balance of the image, Hey, Bob. Make adjustments to all of those things, and then I will set it up or get it ready for print, right? So there are a few steps. And while it's auto saving and my cat is saying hey to everybody, let's go ahead and show you what the Cosmic Gateways Tarot looks like. So again, this is something that I started November 20. I said November. I keep saying November, but I actually went back to look at one of the very first iteration of the Chariot, which turned into the High Priestess. And that actually was, that file was actually finished in October. So we'll just say late November, late 2019. So I started this project late 2019. October or so, right? I finished the first card in November. Bob, I know, friend, but I'm talking. I know what I'm talking though. Okay. So anyway, started this late 2019, and so it's been sort of going off and on from there, right? So off and on, I've been working on this project, and so now we've kind of set aside time for about a year now, set aside time to work on this particular project, and so it's coming a long way. We are at card, child, I think it's 41, I think, something like that. we at card 40 or 41. We're in the 40s now, so that's nice. So I have 30 something cards left to do, so this is going to be quite a process, right? I used to sort of beat myself up about, like, you know, it taking so long, because, you know, sometimes when we're doing things, we can kind of fall into the trap of comparing our lives and ourselves into others. Bob PL said, hey. he real loud. It's funny because he's an outdoor cat, right? He is in and out the house all the time, but he has not been in this house all day. And something told me, I was like, you know what? He gonna come in and start yelling as soon as I start my stream. And sure enough, that's exactly what he did. And it doesn't help that I'm his human. So for people who own cats, and I guess dogs too, but I don't know. But with my cat, they tend to attach themselves to one particular human. Like, they love everybody, they snuggle up under everybody, but I'm his human. And so anytime he needs something or wants to complain about something, because cats do complain, he comes straight to me. So anyhow, but yeah, so back to the deck, child. I got sidetracked. Here he come again. There's a process, right? So I used to beat myself up about it taking so long, because again, we sort of fall into this trap of comparing our lives and our journeys and our projects and our successes and failures to other people. But everybody has their own walk in life, right? Everybody has their own journey. I cannot compare myself to the person who can finish a deck in 6 months, which has happened, right? My style is very different. My experience is very different. My life is set up very different. And so in life, when we kind of fall into that trap, right, of comparing yourself and comparing your walk and comparing your journey to other people, you kind of have to step back and first of all acknowledge how far you've come. So I've come a long way in this project. I've come a long way. I'm looking at this particular card and I can sort of see the growth in my just sort of artistic skills as a whole. There are still areas, of course, I can look at and I'm like, okay, one of these days I gotta go work on landscapes, for example. I keep looking at these trees, right? So there are areas where I can see where improvement needs to happen. But at the same time, I know that I've come a really long way, right? So you have to give yourself that much credit. You've come a long way. So, all right, back to this. Now, I'm going to turn the sketch back on only so I can kind of see where things are. Where I'm creating a shadow below his chest is sort of making his chest stand out a little bit. And so that's not too bad. I don't dislike that particular aspect of this. But what I want to do is sort of add some tension points where he is sitting so that we can kind of create the illusion of folds. Now I'm doing all of this, and what I'll do here in a moment is actually go back over this with our detail colors. So when I start to add the patterns and things like that within our illustration, that's how that happens. So we'll do this. It looks a little lighter here, just sort of using the reference of my character or my 3D model. I'm going to add just a little bit of highlighting, but also, again, keeping in mind that he has his arms down, which is going to create a little bit of a shadow. So what I can do from there is grab one of these in between. I can actually grab my base color because that's shadowy enough for me. And I will sort of add the indication that his arm is resting within this space, right? All right. So something like that. So that looks good. I don't really need to do a whole lot there, not too much on it. So from here, what I would like to do is create sort of the mud cloth. Now I'm going to play with colors. It's going to look how it's going to look, right? I have no idea whether or not this is going to work. This is where we're going to go back to the Queen of Pentacles, because for whatever reason in my mind, within this sort of striped area, I can see like a really hot bright pink, I don't know why pink, and like a green, and this is no nod to any organization that has those colors or anything like that, but I just sort of see those colors popping up. So I'm going to use my Queen of Pentacles as a reference for that, because I like the colors of this particular card. And then from there, we'll see if it works. If it works, great. If not, we'll experiment with some other colors. But I'm going to do all of that on a different layer. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I like the highlights and shadows that we've set up in the red. And I don't want to disturb that too much, right? I don't want to do too much to that, just in case. All right, so let's start adding in some detail. So I think what I'm going to do is start with this forward-most collar, right? All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to label this vest details, and then I'm going to label this collar details, maybe, just in case we don't like it. All right, okay, so I like this green here. So I'm just going to pick that green. I may adjust it. I think I want to go a little bit vibrant and a little bit more dark, right? It may even adjust this towards yellow. And I'm just going to add this in. Again, I have no idea if this is going to work or not. But I also want to keep in mind where my shadows are, because there's a little bit of a shadow here. So what I'll do is come down and we'll sort of add that into the color. So it's not just a plain, color, but we do have a little bit of shadow. Now I want to go cream with the in-between color toward white, right? But creamy. And I want to do something like this. But again, this is a shadow area. There's a shadow here. So I'm setting up my baseline cream, and then I just sort of make it darker so that it doesn't look out of place, right? So I'm going to go a little bit darker. And what I'll do, just so I can kind of stay within the confines of what I've drawn, is I'll just sort of highlight this area, and we will do something like this, right? With this green, of course, there is a shadow here. So we did that with the red in terms of laying in the highlights and the shadows to give ourselves a blueprint for when it comes to adding these details. Now it doesn't look like much, and it may not even matter much, right? But it's just ever so subtle. It gives us what we're looking for. So I kind of want to go. I don't know why. I want these colors. And I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is going to look or feel odd in any way, shape, or form. But I want these colors. Right? Matter of fact, let me go in and grab this red, because I like that better. Right? And green and red are complementary colors. And they sort of show up in this card anyway, because he's wearing an oxblood colored shirt. And his rug is green. His hair is green. And he's sort of in this green-like background. So I'm setting this up for now. I'm going to go with a darker color, right? Something like this. And then within this space, within this pattern, I am going to add some like dots and different shapes and things like that. So it'll make sense, hopefully. And if it doesn't, that's okay, right? If it doesn't, we don't have to take ourselves so seriously that we're sort of stuck with an idea. If it don't work, it don't work, right? But we're going to try it out anyway, because why not? And that's sort of how art has to work. I think showing the process of this, again, when I started this live streaming, one of my hang-ups before I began live streaming, like it was something I had wanted to do for a while, but before I began the process of actually creating live, one of my hang-ups was that I was like, I don't know if I want to share sort of the process of experimenting, right? Sometimes we can kind of get in our own heads, and we feel like, people are going to judge us based on whatever imaginary scenario we create for ourselves, or just watching other people get roasted online, right? Like baked alive. But generally people don't care, right? I don't typically care what the next person is doing, and that's sort of how it goes. People don't pay that much. You're like, we're not that important, right? Right? It was much more important for you to show up and just to be yourself, and you'll attract the people into your life that resonate with you, right? They vibe with you. And if they don't, they have the power of scrolling on or blocking or whatever it is that they have to do, and that's perfectly okay. All right, so what I just did was I actually broke this square up into twos, because I have the shadow that kind of goes underneath his pec, and then I have the highlight that sort of sits on top. So that's going to create the illusion that it's sort of folding with his body, this particular color pattern, right? All right, so from here, I'm going to grab that green color, and I'm actually going to make it just a bit brighter because we're in this highlighted zone. And again, this is going to give us the illusion that this is folding and catching the same amount of light as the rest of him, right? So we have our highlight, and we're going to keep this bright all the way up because the highlight kind of goes all the way up. So we have this darker color here, so we're just going to make it a little bit brighter. I'm going to turn down the saturation just a bit, not by much, and then we're going to fill in based on the shapes that I drew. And then within this, we may add some like details in terms of like striping in between. But this is sort of the process. Now, this can be a little bit tedious. It tends to be. I remember maybe the first time I've gone live was on the Instagram live. And at the time I was working on, at the time Game of Thrones was out, and Game of Thrones was hella popular, right? And I was drawing Daenerys Targaryen, but I was doing her in like the rockabilly style. So she had like the a pompadour, and then she had like the curls and the tattoo and all of that. So I showed the process of creating the hair, right? And I was drawing like each individual strand so that it's, it read the way that I wanted it to read. And I remember people, the few people that were with me during that time, speaking to the fact that it seemed like a very tedious process. It can be, right? Especially for me with straight hair, because that is not something that I am strong in. Straight hair landscapes, those are the two areas that I would love to be better in. But in that particular case, I was doing my best. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get this straight hair style down. And I wanted to look, because at that time I did a lot of much more photorealistic illustrations, right? So it's super important for me to be able to have the hair match the face. And so it was just a tedious process, and sometimes it is. And in that, you sort of have to find, for me, I find it very relaxing. So if we're looking at this Queen of Pentacles down in the reference panel, now you guys will hear me say that landscapes and trees and things like that is something that I struggle with, but I think it more in the abstract. Whenever I set myself up for actual like leaves and trees, and I can get references that look like actual plants, I do extremely well. But it took forever. It took such a long time to get these leaves right. And you can kind of tell, right? To me, I can tell looking at these that I really did my best to try to articulate each one of those leaves. And so again, it is a tedious process, but the payoff is so wonderful. It's such a wonderful payoff, right? So sometimes you have to kind of take your time with things, and as we take our time, there is a payoff in the end. So if I was to zoom out of this, right, we're starting to see that down below there's a bit of a shadow, right? Because that is sort of where we have our shadow set up. Now here in this area, maybe we can add just a little bit of a highlight, not that one, just a little bit of a highlight here to sort of go along with the shadow within his abs. But for the most part, we want to give the illusion that this thing is contouring around his body just like his vest. Again, I don't know if any of this gonna work. It looks super bright for now, so we can go back and adjust that now. I just want to use these colors. I have no idea why they're calling to me, and in my mind's eye, I just sort of had to put them down so that I can work with them and see where they go. Now again, they look hella bright. So what we can do after I finish laying them in is we can actually go in and adjust how bright or dark we want these to be, especially compared to sort of the rest of where he's sitting, and then we will go from there. But before I do that, what I would like to do is sort of finish it, get the mud cloth part at the bottom done, and then adjust the coloring. Because if I do it prematurely, it could still be too dark. It could still kind of be out of place. So even though it looks really bright and odd now, right? Remember, art, it has several processes. It has several processes that it'll go through and transform from one spot to the other as we go. Just like the background of this image. Very much like the background of this image. So we started with, there was no double door setup. So if I zoom out here, I'll show you. And you can kind of see in the sketch itself, if you can see those dark lines, there was no double door setup. I just had one door and it's sort of led outside. But I recognized the problem in my illustration, and I wasn't so attached to what I had already done that I felt like there was no room for me to change it. I had to change it, right? We pivot, and that's totally okay. All right, so we're gonna lay in these bright colors for now, and then I will go in and adjust them wherever I see fit. There we go. I'm trying to find my mouse. There we go. All right, so let's get in here and finish this up. And then now that he has hair, because even though within our reference with the 3D model there isn't a shadow here, we sort of have to make sense of the scene, like his hair hangs down to his shoulder, so there's going to be a little bit of a shadow. So we'll go back into some of these shadow tones in just a bit, and I'll show you just what I mean. I have to flip through 1,000 references, but we'll get there. So I hope you guys are doing okay. Again, whether you're watching this live or the replay, I really appreciate you for being here and listening to me talk 90 miles an hour. Now again, because my goal is to finish this and to finish this live so that I could just be done with it, at a certain point I may just kind of stop talking, but I'll give you guys a heads up and turn on the music and just sort of let you guys watch me work. Hey, Draw Sketchbook, I'm so happy to see you. I let you guys watch me work as we sort of listen to music, and then I'll kind of come back at the end. But until then, let me just walk you through what I'm doing, and then we'll sort of cut to that part of the portion of the live, right? So this live streams I really enjoy doing, because anytime I do a standalone video, and it looks like my video is frozen, so you guys hopefully can hear me okay, but anytime I do a standalone video, there are several steps that I take just so that I'm happy with the end result. So I have to like plan the video, and I have to sort of organize what I want to say. I tend to write scripts because it's just easier for me to deliver, just organize my thoughts, right? So as a creative, my mind tends to run 1,000 miles an hour, and sometimes I can sort of lose track of the plot, right? So for me, writing the script for that helps out a whole lot. So I'll have to write the script, and I have to practice it, right? So that when I'm going to deliver what it is that I'm going to say, that I usually film myself about 4 or 5 times, depending on the length of the video, depending on how I'm presenting. If it's just a voiceover, it's a lot easier because I'm just reading it, and I usually write the way I speak, right? But after that, then I have to shoot it, then I have to edit it, then I have to do a whole bunch of things. But live streaming seems to be something that I really enjoy doing, just for the ease of it, right? And best of all, I really enjoy just working and listening to music and chatting with you guys in the chat on Wednesdays. So it's certainly taken a bit of a pivot over the years. Now, one thing I would like to ask, and I'll probably add a poll to the community tab for this channel, so you guys look out for that. I do know that I have some interest in doing some sort of art tutorial videos, and those are still in the works, and I'm still trying to figure out the best way to teach a subject, right? But I would really like to know what it is that you guys want to see. Do you like seeing the process of creating the Cosmic Gateways Tarot? And it looks like my camera's going out. Ciao. All right, let's see if we can fix it. But in the meantime, so would you guys like to see more of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot? Do you guys want to see any particular subject matter? Is there anything in particular that you would like to watch me do or watch me create as we work our way through the Cosmic Gateways Tarot? So the camera's gone out, so maybe that is a sign for me to get on back to work, but we'll see how it goes here in just a second. All right, let's see if I can get it going. In the meantime, in between time, let me show you what the Cosmic Gateways. So I'm still here. You just gotta see me, right? But I'll show you what the Cosmic Gateways Tarot are looking like, and let's see if I can get this camera to work again, and hopefully it will. I have no idea why it stopped. but we'll get there and we'll manage and we'll work our way through. So I see there are quite a few people watching. Please do me the huge solid of hitting the like button, and if you would like to see more of these creation videos, please hit the subscribe button, because I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers this year. So hopefully we'll do that. I have not from now until December to meet that goal. If we don't, we'll just keep going until we do, right? All right, so I'm loading up my camera. Hopefully it comes back on. Let's see. All right, my bad. I probably should have said, hold on. Okay, I'm still trying to get the camera to work, so we may just have to wing this thing. It looks like it looks like it does not want to connect, so that's okay. All right, well, it is what it is. Maybe this is a sign for me to go ahead and then flip on some music so you guys can hear me speak. Or let me know in the chat. There are 6 people watching. Would you prefer for me to start the live over and do another live so you guys can see it, so I can get it together? Or do you want me to keep going? Let me know. Please let me know. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to keep trying in the background, though, as I do this. Try to get it to connect to the stream. It has done this once before. I'm not entirely sure why, but all right, let's do this. I think I'm going to end it. So for those of you who are watching, keep watching with me, and I'm going to restart the stream, and so hopefully part 2 will get to working. So don't go anywhere, please. I'll be right back. So I'm going to end the stream here. So whether you're watching this live or the replay, thank you so much, but come back for part 2 so we can hopefully get the camera working and then get back to what we're going to get back to. All right, so in just a second, I'll see you, and we're out.